I've got two owner's manuals open in front of me right now. Same manufacturer, same engine family, same model year. The one on my left was printed for North America, and the maintenance page says the recommended engine oil is 0W-20. Not acceptable, not if you like, recommended. Then I slide the other one across the desk. Same car, built for a different market, and the viscosity line on that page reads 5W-30. Read that again. One book says 0W-20. The other book says 5W-30. Nobody made a typo. Nobody mistranslated anything. Both documents were written by the same company, reviewed by the same kind of engineers, and printed with the same legal department signing off at the bottom. Same engine, same factory. Two different pages. And I want to sit in that for a second, because this is the moment where most videos on this subject go completely off the rails. They take that contradiction and they turn it into an accusation. Somebody's getting the good oil and somebody's getting the cheap oil. That's the easy story. It's also, in my assessment, the wrong one. So here's the honest, immediate answer, right up front, before I've earned anything from you. Both recommendations appear to be engineering correct for the environment each one was written for. Not one right and one wrong. Two correct answers to two genuinely different questions. The North American page was written for a North American regulatory environment and a North American way of driving. The other page was written for a different specification framework, a different drain interval assumption, and roads where people do things with cars that most Americans simply never do. But wait, if that's true, and I think it is, then something much more interesting falls out of it. Because if the same physical engine can be signed off on two different grades by the people who designed it, that tells you something about how much room that engine actually has inside it. That's the real story here, not betrayal, margin. Let's go find it. Start with the clothing, because that's the cleanest way I know to explain viscosity grade without a physics lecture. Imagine a tailor cutting the same coat pattern for two customers. Same shoulders, same sleeve length, same body underneath. One customer lives somewhere with mild, damp winters and does a lot of walking between warm buildings, so the tailor cuts it lighter. The other customer spends hours outdoors in hard weather with wind coming off open country, so the tailor lines it heavier. Same pattern, same person's measurements. Two different cuts, both correct, and the reason is the climate, not the body. Oil viscosity works like that cut. The first number with the W is the cold flow behavior, how easily the oil moves when everything is cold and stiff. The second number describes how thick the oil still is once it's hot and working. A 0W-20 is tailored lighter when hot. A 5W-30 is lined heavier when hot. The real-world consequence is that lighter costs the engine less energy to push around, and heavier keeps a slightly more robust cushion between moving parts when things get genuinely hot and stay there. Why does that matter to you? Because which one is better depends entirely on what you're about to walk out into. Now the regulatory machinery, in plain speech. In the United States, corporate average fuel economy standards don't grade each car individually. They grade the whole fleet as an average, and manufacturers earn and trade what amount to fleet average credits against that target. Miss the average, and there are real financial consequences. Beat it, and you bank something valuable. That structure changes how engineers think, because it means a gain doesn't have to be dramatic to be worth chasing. Here's the thing people underestimate. Dropping from a 30 weight to a 20 weight tends to produce a small fuel economy improvement, generally described in the industry as a fraction of a percent up to a low single digit, depending on the engine and the test cycle. On one car, that's noise. You'd never feel it. But multiply a fraction of a percent across 1 million vehicles in a fleet average calculation, where credits carry monetary value and shortfalls carry penalties. And that rounding error turns into a line item somebody has to defend in a budget meeting. So the incentive in the American market pushes hard toward the lowest viscosity the engine can genuinely support. Notice the wording there, because it's load-bearing. The lowest grade the engine can support, not the lowest grade somebody can get away with. Manufacturers still have to warranty that engine, and warranty claims are extraordinarily expensive, so the specification has to survive the durability testing that regional homologation demands. The technical term is oil film thickness. The simple version is how much cushion stands between two metal surfaces that are trying to touch. The consequence of getting that wrong is accelerated wear on bearings and cam lobes. And the reason no engineer signs off casually is that those failures show up in the warranty data long before the model cycle ends with their name attached. But regulation on its own doesn't explain that second manual, and this is where the story gets good. Because if 0W-20 were purely a compliance trick with no downside, you'd expect the company to specify it everywhere and quietly pocket the efficiency. They don't. So what changes across the border? Start with the specification framework, because North America and Europe don't even measure oil the same way. In the American market, engine oils are typically qualified against API service categories and ILSAC standards. And ILSAC, in particular, is explicitly built with fuel economy and emission system protection as headline goals. In Europe, oils are commonly qualified against ACEA sequences, which grew up around different priorities, including longer service intervals and engines run hard for extended periods. 2 committees, 2 sets of test protocols, 2 definitions of what a good oil even is. And they disagree about one number in particular that almost nobody outside the industry talks about. It's called high temperature, high shear viscosity, measured at 150 degrees Celsius. Think of it as the floor. The minimum thickness the oil is still required to have when it's screaming hot and being squeezed through a bearing at speed. Certain full SAPS ACEA sequences associated with 5W-30 recommendations set that floor at 3.5 millipascal seconds. A typical 0W-20 qualified under the ILSAC framework may sit at around 2.6, 3.5 against 2.6. That's the whole argument, expressed as 2 numbers. Here's your running shoe moment. A sprinter on a synthetic track wears something almost absurdly light because every gram costs time and the surface is predictable and smooth. Put those same shoes on a mountain trail with loose rock and 6 hours of descending, and light stops being an advantage. Not because the shoe was badly made, because the ground changed. The high temperature, high shear margin is that extra structure in the trail shoe. On the track, it's dead weight. On the mountain, it's the reason your ankle survives hour 5. So what's the mountain in car terms? It's the sustained load duty cycle, and this is the real heart of the whole thing. On unrestricted stretches of German Autobahn, and on plenty of other high-limit motorways, drivers routinely hold speeds that would be a serious criminal matter in most American states, and they hold them for a long time. Not a burst, not a merge. 40 minutes at 100 miles an hour with a loaded car and a roof box in August heat. Oil temperature climbs and stays climbed. Shear stress on the polymer chains in the oil keeps going hour after hour. Now compare that with how an American commuter car actually lives. Cold start. 6 miles of arterial road at 40. A traffic light every half mile. Freeway at 70 for 20 minutes if you're unlucky with the commute. Park. The engine spends a meaningful chunk of its life not even fully warmed up, and it almost never sees a genuine sustained load duty cycle. The oil in that car is being asked a completely different question than the oil in the Autobahn car. And a lighter grade answers the American question extremely well while also getting the car warm faster and lubricated sooner on those cold mornings that dominate the wear picture. An engineer whose reasoning shaped how I think about this is a European powertrain durability and homologation lead I'll call Martin Vogel. Changed name because he's still in the industry, but the argument is his and not mine. The way he put it to me was that a viscosity recommendation isn't a statement about the engine in isolation. It's a statement about the engine, plus the road, plus the service interval, plus the law. Change any one of those inputs, he said, and the output can legitimately change, without anybody having lied to anybody. The service interval piece is the one most people miss entirely. Buried inside every oil recommendation is a drain interval assumption. In many European markets, service intervals have historically been longer, sometimes considerably longer, with condition-based systems stretching things out further. An oil that has to hold its properties for 12,000 miles of hard motorway running faces a harder job than one changed at a shorter domestic interval under gentler conditions. Heavier hot viscosity buys you resistance to shear down over that longer window. Same oil, different assignment length. Then stack on the boring inputs nobody makes videos about. Ambient temperature ranges differ enormously by region, and where sustained summer ambient temperatures sit high, manufacturers in several hot climate markets are known to specify higher grades outright. Fuel formulations vary, which affects dilution of the oil by unburned fuel. Even typical trip length differs by market, and each regional document has to satisfy that market's regional homologation requirements, which is why you get 2 books rather than 1 global page. So now the payoff. What does all of this tell you about your own engine? This part genuinely changed how I look at my own car, and it isn't the conclusion the internet wants. The hardware is largely common. Same block, same bearing dimensions, same oil. Pump, same clearances, coming down largely the same production line, which means the engine in the American driveway is mechanically capable of operating on the heavier grade, because the company's own foreign market documentation effectively demonstrates it. That's not a leak, that's not a whistleblower, that's 2 publicly printed manuals sitting side by side. Your engine has real tolerance across the viscosity range, and the regional documents are the proof. But now the part that keeps this honest, and I want to be very clear about it, the existence of that tolerance does not mean the American recommendation is a durability compromise under American driving. Evidence available to me suggests it isn't. Under normal domestic commuting, in a temperate climate, on the domestic service interval, the lighter grade appears to provide entirely adequate film thickness while delivering faster cold start protection and better efficiency. The margin only gets thinner under duty cycles that most American drivers essentially never run. Different conditions, different answer. That's not a scandal, that's engineering. Where does the outside evidence point? Used oil analysis is the closest thing consumers have to a window here. Independent laboratories run wear metal panels on submitted samples, looking at iron, aluminium, copper, chromium, and lead in parts per million, alongside viscosity retention and fuel dilution. What tends to show up in aggregated consumer data on modern engines, running their factory-specified light grades under ordinary use, is wear metals in unremarkable ranges. Not alarming, not dramatically different from the same engines abroad on heavier oil. Where the picture does tend to shift is at the edges. Samples associated with heavy towing, track use, sustained very high speed or extreme heat are the ones more likely to show viscosity, that is sheared measurably out of grade by the end of the interval, and sometimes elevated fuel dilution alongside it. Same engine, same oil on the shelf. The variable that moved was how the car was used. That pattern is exactly what the two-manual story predicts, which is one reason I find the regional explanation more persuasive than the conspiracy one. Now hold on, because I know where a certain kind of viewer's brain goes next. If the foreign spec is heavier, and heavier sounds tougher, why not just run the foreign spec and get free insurance? I understand the appeal completely. I also think that logic can backfire, and here's why. Cold start flow first. The 0 in 0W isn't decoration. It describes how readily the oil moves through narrow passages when the engine has been sitting overnight in the cold, and a large share of total engine wear is associated with those first moments before full oil pressure reaches everything. Go back to the coat. Nobody's arguing the heavy-lined coat is badly made, but try sprinting for a bus in it in mild weather, and you'll understand instantly that the wrong cut for the conditions has a cost. Slower cold delivery in an engine designed around fast cold delivery is a real trade, not a free upgrade. Second, the hydraulics. Modern engines use oil as a working fluid, not only a lubricant. Variable valve timing systems and cam phasers are positioned by pressurized oil through small control passages, and their response was calibrated around a specific viscosity range. Heavier oil can alter that response, particularly when cold. Analogy, it's like tailoring a jacket with heavier interlining than the pattern called for. It still buttons, but the sleeves don't move the way the cutter intended. The real-world consequence can range from nothing you'd ever notice to rougher cold running, or, in some cases, a stored fault code. Why it matters to you is that those systems also affect emissions behavior. Third, the efficiency penalty is real, and it's yours to pay, not the manufacturer's. Fourth, and this is the one people forget until it's expensive, your maintenance record then departs from specification. If a lubrication-related claim ever comes up inside the warranty period, records showing oil outside the recommended grade give the other side something to point at. You may win that argument, you may not. In my assessment, that's a poor trade for a change most drivers won't feel. So, let's make this usable. If you're doing normal American commuting, temperate climate, factory spec engine, ordinary service intervals, then the domestic recommendation is genuinely correct for you and you are not being shortchanged. Stay on the specified grade, change it on schedule. That's the whole answer, and it's a boring one because good engineering usually is. If you're doing sustained 85 mile an hour highway running through summer heat, or towing near capacity through grades, or running track days, then you're the mountain trail case, not the track shoe case. And it becomes reasonable to read your own manual's alternate grade and high ambient temperature language carefully, and to talk to a mechanic who knows your specific engine about whether a shorter interval or a different qualified oil suits how you actually drive. And if you're tempted to import a foreign spec purely because a heavier number sounds tougher, please weigh the cold start delivery question, the phaser calibration question, the efficiency you'd give up, and the documentation trail you'd be creating. Tougher sounding isn't the same as better suited. Here's the one thing to actually do this week. Go get your own owner's manual, physical copy, or the official regional edition online. Open the maintenance section and find the viscosity paragraph. Read what sits around it. Look specifically for alternate grade wording and any high ambient temperature guidance. Some manuals permit a substitute grade if the primary isn't available and ask you to return to spec at the next change. Some permit nothing above the listed grade at all, and that's information too, 5 minutes. Then you're arguing from your own document instead of somebody's comment section. I should say plainly that this is general information, not a recommendation for your specific vehicle, and your own manual, plus a mechanic you trust are the final word on what goes in your engine. Now I want to build something with you, because I only have 2 manuals and there are dozens of markets. If you're watching from outside North America, drop a comment with the exact grade printed in your manual, your model, and your model year. Australia, Germany, Japan, the Gulf states, India, Brazil, Canada, all of it. If you're in North America, post yours too so we've got something to compare it against. let's assemble the actual regional map in the comments and see where the pattern holds and where it breaks, because I guarantee some of you have a page that surprises me. If that's the kind of question you want answered with documents instead of opinions, subscribing is how you make sure the next one finds you.